agenda is the continuing mutual disarmament talks with NATO. I assume you've all read General Gogol's report. It seems very thorough.
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. I believe I expressed the opinion of everyone present that adoption of NATO proposals does not compromise our defensive position.
Comrade Chairman.
General Orloff.
General Gogol is presumptuous. He speaks for himself and others who cling to timid, outdated, and unrealistic policies. Must I remind you, the committee, of our overwhelming superiority over NATO forces before we give it away? In East Germany, under my direct command, I have 31 divisions, including 11 tank divisions and another 5 in Czechoslovakia. In support on the Russian western border are 60 divisions, including 22 tank divisions. In all, a 10-to-1 advantage. American and West German forces can field at most 10 armored divisions. The British maintain only a token force. We have played out a variety of attack strategies on the new Kuznetsov computer and find that a lightning thrust by 10 armored divisions from the north and by 5 more through Czechoslovakia lead to total victory in 5 days against any possible defense scenario.
This is absolute madness. We know where it will end. NATO will counterattack with nuclear weapons.
Never! The West is decadent and divided. It has no stomach to risk our atomic reprisals. Throughout Europe, daily demonstrations demand unilateral nuclear disarmament.
I see no reason to risk war to satisfy your personal paranoia and thirst for conquest. We must turn our energies to pressing domestic problems.
General Gogol, let me remind
Comrades,
you.
sit down.
I wish to tell
Both
you.
of you.
Hello everybody, Sky Marshall in the Eagle's Nest bringing you Turn 5 review of Operation Failsafe. And this one's a little bit of fun. You can tell from the opening that, we went to war. And I blame Dan. It's all Dan's fault. It always will be Dan's fault. It's always a good one to blame. But nonetheless, his intellectual prowess has paid dividends for the communist regimes that have been spreading their influence throughout Europe, Southeast Asia, and China. So currently right now, the game is going along pretty good and enjoying quite a bit of it right now. So I'm going to go through step by step with the Warsaw Pact, NATO, and so on. And we're going to go over what has happened in the last several weeks, because it has taken a little bit to do Turn 5 because there's just been so much going on. So without further ado, let's back up and we're going to go into a deep dive here and show you what has been developing. So Warsaw Pact did declare war on NATO, and as you can see, we had dropped airborne into Marmara and central Turkey, seizing those undefended territories. We were also putting in an airborne division into Crete, which was also unoccupied, and steamrolled a early gen battlefield tank in Assam into Greece, occupying these 4 NATO territories. Now, we were also fortunate in the south here. We landed and seized Lazio from the NATO forces that were defending it. We lost a few casualties here and there, but nonetheless, you can see that there's 5 attack helicopters, as well as several air calves and 1 airborne that survived in that area. Now, currently you see a lot of orange chips up in Rome there for that minor army base. Well, that's because NATO on the retaliatory strike caused a little damage in Lazio and harmed our vital infrastructure that we were going to use there. But not as all lost. Like I say, at least they didn't take any of our more valuable, precious units. We also moved forces into northern Yugoslavia, seizing that. So now Yugoslavia is united under one banner arm. And further north, we pushed further into northern Germany and Bavaria, seizing both areas with relatively minor casualties in the big picture of things. However, our forces were defeated in Bavaria, and NATO did take that territory back. But once again, we are deployed in such a way where we can take Bavaria again back, and this might seesaw back and forth, depending on how many forces NATO brings into this area. And as you can see further behind, we are also joined by some very important U.S. forces. We did have 1 diesel-electric submarine that was sunk down here by superior NATO forces at the time, but we do have 1 unpainted frigate in the Mediterranean, as well as our Romeo-class diesel-electric boats. All 3 of them are still alive up here in the Mediterranean. Now, NATO, with the retaliatory strikes, really only caused damage in the south and further north here. They didn't do too much, really, in the big picture of things, except for taking Bavaria back. Now, after NATO's turn was completed, and they had all done their redeployments and their defensive measures, that's when the big boys hit. And the Soviet Union decided to pull their naval forces out of the Black Sea and rush on over just off the coast of Italy there and destroy, and I mean destroy, the NATO forces that were there. And if you want to see what that naval battle looked like, we can come right here and visually see what happened. The John F. Kennedy was sunk. The 2 French cruisers, the Colbert-class cruisers, were both destroyed. The Montcalm and several smaller frigates, including 2 Canadian frigates, were sunk. Soviet casualties. We did lose the Minsk in that battle, as well as the Sevastopol, 2 frigates, and an Akula-class submarine. But all for all, a victory for the Soviets nonetheless. The 2 survivors were the Udloy and the Admiral Levichenko, and they are now currently patrolling the waters around the area here at M3. The only surviving NATO forces currently right now are diesel-electric submarine and the British destroyer Sheffield patrolling the Mediterranean. It definitely is balance of power overnight has shifted. Now, further north, we're going to go over here and show you what happened. The United States Second Fleet, which I believe had the USS Kitty Hawk here, suffered all-hand damage, and she was sunk. Actually, I think we got footage somewhere. Actually, yeah, let's roll that right now. I think we actually got live footage from some of our Soviet bombers of the destruction of that carrier group. Wow, look at that. Wasn't that amazing? And all for the loss of 1 Foxtrot class diesel electric and 3 frigates. We were able to sink that NATO task force right there. The British Exeter the Virginia-class cruiser, and the British nuclear attack boat, the Sovereign, all were sunk, including the USS Kitty Hawk. Very, very rough day for NATO's naval deployments and NATO forces. NATO did suffer some damages here with their military base up here in Norway. And as you can see, Soviet forces are placed in Sweden. A few more forces further back up here. But most of our naval assets have left and gone into Sea Zone A10 that was able to sink that second fleet, the United States Second Fleet. And currently right now, the Slava-class cruiser is the pride of the Soviet Northern Attack Force, with an older Sverdlov-class cruiser and several other support vessels. Now we have the the HMS Intrepid in port there in Benelux, but you can see NATO forces here still have a fairly strong air force, a lot of air supremacy fighters, as well as attack bombers, attack helos. So yeah, NATO still is very, very powerful in some areas, and you can see all the mechanized divisions, but not a lot of tanks left. That's actually why the U.S. has brought over a few armored divisions here to help shore up NATO forces. Now, that all transpiring has been great now, but also we have seen a huge build-up down here in Angola, where Soviet forces have actually deployed fighters and units for attacks down in Angola, and of course, even China has put their paws into Zaire, of all places. Now, let's head on over to India and see what's been going on down here. Now, the USS Enterprise and her attack group are stationed here just off the Gulf, protecting their vital assets. But we have noticed here that a lot of oil tankers have been hit by Soviet attacks and causing havoc with a lot of U.S. oil supplies here. And keep in mind, right here, the Indian and Soviet fleets are very steadily growing power here into the Indian Ocean, and we haven't even gotten to Far East Command yet. That'll be a different story. Over here, the USS Houston, a Los Angeles-class attack submarine, was destroyed and killed, going up against an Akula-class submarine. Obviously, the Soviets definitely have really good gunnery these days, and I'm not surprised. Far superior in many ways, but that's a different story. And over here, Pakistan is no more. Soviet and Indian forces moved out of Afghanistan and from India down into and pincered northern Pakistan and southern Pakistan at great cost to Soviet forces, I might add. But nonetheless, now you can see the Iron Curtain stretches all the way down into India. So from ocean to ocean to ocean to ocean, there is no bounds for the Soviet forces. Now, after this, U.S. Global was able to, and successfully able to, destroy the PRF in Latin America right now. And currently their naval assets, the USS Iwo Jima and the Mississippi and a cruiser, are all redeploying possibly for defense or an assault to help out NATO. But deep down here, and I think this was the U.S. Fifth Fleet, Carl Vinson moved down here with her attack group to look at disrupting the Soviet submarines, the Foxtrot class and the Akula class submarines that had destroyed these oil tanker supply lines. And right now the USS Dallas and the Haler, Leyte Gulf and the John A. Moore all trying to hunt these submarines, and they were unsuccessful this turn. So we'll have to wait and see what the Carl Vinson has to do with up their sleeve, because she'll have to deal with some of these issues. But not to mention, they also have to worry about Soviet forces possibly coming out of the Mediterranean and possibly dealing with another carrier assault force. So, Global Command done. Far East Command made a bold move and moved into northern Manchuria and central Manchuria and seized these territories. And now we're going to have a wonderful, glorious battle to the death between Chinese forces and superior Soviet forces. Further south here, Burma was seized by Far East Command, but then taken by China. So it's been a three-way standoff because it was a formerly U.S. territory. And the U.S. were able, PAC, Pacific Command, was able to take Singapore away from the glory of the Soviet forces down here. Cambodia, Thailand are all under our control. Even Far East Command was successful in taking Hainan Island from the Chinese. But the Chinese did repel and attack Mongolian territory. So even losing 3 territories, they were able to take back, I think, at least 2 or 3 territories and gain the allies of Nepal and, I believe, Bangladesh. Now moving on, in the Pacific, we had another major naval battle where you can see the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower was literally annihilated. She's a Nimitz-class supercarrier, the first nuclear carrier to go down, along with the support ships, the Texas, the Thorn, the Robert G. Bradley, and the George Phillip. Casualties were relatively light on the Soviet side. The Kiev was lost, so another heavy cruiser carrier, the Kiev and Minsk. Their losses will be felt greatly. 2 Kilo-class diesel attack submarines and 1 Akula-class submarine. Casualties here are not that bad, but ultimately now we have the Kronstadt, the pride of the Soviet Far East Fleet, with the Strongy and the Krasny Krim, with 1 Kula-class nuclear attack submarine off the coast of Iwo Jima, basically showing naval supremacy. Now, PAC did build a destroyer or cruiser over here, the USS California. She was taken out of mothballs, recommissioned. But of course, the Soviets also put in another heavy cruiser, and that's the Admiral Dakimov. So she will also be joining her sister ship, the Kronstadt. A lot of crazy things going on here, a lot of missile strikes back and forth, attacks here and here. You can see the bulk of the Soviet Air Force here is in the Philippines right now, holding their spot, a very vital spot. We have the U.S. Pacific Fleet down here that landed and successfully attacked Singapore with the USS Guam and her support vessels right here off the coast. So the Soviets are going to have to worry about that, as well as an Oliver Hazard Perry class frigate, which was seen sighted off Hainan Island. A lot of crazy, interesting things here. We have the Chicago and the Miami, 2 more Los Angeles nuclear attack submarines here, poising to strike against Soviet or possibly even Chinese aggression, but I know that might still take a little bit of time. But very interesting course of events so far. Lots happening. The game is just getting exciting, but I wanted to show you visually the destruction that the Soviets have done on this first round. Here in the Soviet Union, or actually the Warsaw Pact, we're doing some studies on this U-2 spy plane here. So we're just doing close surveillance and seeing if we can crack and figure out any secrets that might help us. I think I might have missed this, but Vice Admiral Kulov and Admiral Vinogradov, they have been commissioned in the Black Sea, also to support more Soviet operations. And in glory of all this wonderful conquest, the Soviet government has just launched the space station Mir. That's right, up into orbit to show naval supremacy. To show space as one of their crown jewels and one of their achievements of the domination of outer space. So we salute our Soviet comrades. Looks like we have, we'll go over there closely. Looks like we have one of the Soviet Soyuz capsule already docked at the space station Mir. Sure enough, it is. And we also have a new Buran Soviet space shuttle cruising there. Where are the Americans? Well, good question. I guess they're years behind our wonderful Soviet space program. But alas, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this review and a little bit of fun. Throwing a few videos in here just to liven it up. I think I've probably missed a few small things here and there, but all in all, a lot is heating up here. Europe's going to war. We have the Middle East going to war. We have Southeast Asia going to war. And the entire Pacific Rim is firing up. So stay tuned for turn 6, guys. And hopefully we will see you guys soon. Have a happy new year.